and Miss Bernadette Natukwasa, Forest Carbon and Compliance Officer at TRIO Uganda. We hear a lot of good things about TRIO Uganda. Congratulations, and we're happy to have you in the panel.
Thank you.
I also wish to note that at the very end, at the closing, we'll have Ndugu David Maeri, who's the Regional Communications Advisor via Agroforestry, and he will do the closing remarks. Are we all ready? Yes. All right, let's launch into this, ladies and gentlemen. So let us begin, and let's call on Ms. Kezia for the keynote address. Karibu.
Good afternoon, viewers, colleagues, and partners. It is a great honor to present the key insights from our policy brief on scaling agroforestry in East African drylands. Landscapes that remain highly vulnerable yet hold tremendous potential. Across Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, communities face rising temperatures, declining soil fertility, food insecurity, and chronic water scarcity. These pressures are not only environmental. They directly threaten human security by driving displacement, straining social systems, and intensifying competition over limited resources. Within these challenges lies transformative opportunity, and this is agroforestry, the deliberate integration of trees and crops and livestock is a strategic development approach that strengthens resilience and enhances dryland livelihoods. Evidence consistently shows its impact wherever it has been applied. It can raise crop yields, rebuild soil organic matter, improve biodiversity, and diversify household income in areas where climate variability is most severe. Our policy brief outlines 5 priority actions for scaling agroforestry. And with this, we have number 1, strengthening policy and institutional frameworks. Harmonizing agroforestry within agriculture, environment, and climate policies is essential to ensure coordinated implementation tailored to dryland realities. Then increasing funding and incentives. Adoption depends on targeted financing, appropriate subsidies, and stronger value chains that enable farmers to invest confidently and benefit from long-term returns. Then number 3 is investing in capacity building. Expanding extension services like farmers-to-farmer learning and agroforestry training will sustain knowledge and practice at scale. Number 4, securing land tenure and governance. How? Equitable land rights, especially for women and marginalized groups, are fundamental, and it's a foundation to long-term investment in trees. And lastly, equally important, fostering inclusive partnerships. Scaling agroforestry requires co-design with farmers, indigenous communities, local governments, private sectors, and civil society. So across Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania, we have seen a lot of achievements and evidence that agroforestry has brought forward. For example, in Kenya, the FMNR, or the Farmer Managed Natural Regeneration in Kitui County, has restored degraded land, improved fodder availability, and strengthened household incomes, demonstrating how community regeneration can revive drylands. This is also evident in Uganda in districts such as Teso and Karamoja, integrating shea fruit trees, acacia species, and the mixed farming practices has enhanced soil moisture retention, stabilized yields, and opened new income streams through tree products, even during severe drought. In Tanzania, here where I am, for example, in Shinyanga, the Shinyanga Restoration Program, mostly known as HASHI, has revitalized Miombo woodlands through agroforestry and community stewardship, improving soils, supporting livestock system, and restoring cultural ties to the land. These examples confirm that agroforestry is practical, scalable, and economically sound. It aligns with national development priorities and contributes directly to key global goals, including the zero hunger, climate action, and ecosystem restoration. So allow me to conclude with this. Agroforestry may not resolve every dryland challenge, no, but it stands among the most powerful tools we have to regenerate landscapes, strengthen livelihoods, and improve resilience. The time for policy conversation must now be matched with concrete practice. And beginning from now, let this be our collective call, you and me, to shape enabling policies, to support communities, and to commit to regenerating the landscapes that sustain us. Asante sana. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Kezia, for the keynote address and rallying call, the actionable recommendations, country-specific examples, while you also highlighted the critical roles of gender inclusion, youth engagement, and advocacy in shaping effective policy and practice. And now over to you, my expert panelists. We are time barred. I'll give you about 3 minutes each, some maybe 5. We have 35 minutes, and let's get straight underway with thematic areas. And let's begin with you, Dr. Monica, the expert panel lead. What are the most pressing climate and food security challenges facing dryland communities in East Africa? And how does agroforestry address these issues? Karibu.
Asante sana. There are so many challenges that the drylands communities encounter, and I'll just give a few. One is obvious, the erratic rainfall and prolonged droughts. In the region, the drylands areas, we experience bouts of and very frequent drought periods that affects food production and also nutrition for the families. But agroforestry offers a solution whereby trees improve the soil moisture retention and also modify the microclimate of these areas. The other challenge is on the land degradation and soil erosion, which is a very big challenge. And this emanates mostly from our land use, especially when we overgraze in these areas, when we deforest in these areas for various reasons, whether it is for agriculture or for charcoal and so on. And this causes the soil in these areas to be very fragile and prone to soil erosion. But agroforestry supports the soil by stabilizing the soil and reducing the speed of the soil erosion, and also enhances the organic matters through the leaf litter. We have various trees, agroforestry trees, that improves the soil. Some are nitrogen fixing, some have a lot of litter that can improve the humus in the soil. The other challenge is on food security, including nutrition, and it is caused by the low agricultural productivity in these areas, especially with the climatic changes. And this means that we need to use agroforestry to help the communities in these areas to diversify on food production. This means that you can do fruit trees, you can also do beekeeping, for example. You can also diversify in terms of vegetables and legumes to ensure that the family is not only calorifically supported, but also nutritional support is offered. We also have the loss of biodiversity and monoculture farming. This is unsustainable farming methods that most of the communities use. We know that in the drylands, the main livelihood source is the animal keeping, and normally it is monoculture or taken as a silo. So we advocate agroforestry because it is about diversity, including trees on the farm especially, and also integrating it with the livestock keeping. And this improves the biodiversity of the areas. It also helps in pest and disease controls, and also builds the resilience of the communities in these areas. So a mix of tree and crops and the livestock is very important in these areas. The other one is the conflict that is coming on and on and off, and especially over the scarce resources. As the climate change eats up, we also have reduced resources that the communities fight over. This could be trees, this could be grazing space, this could be water. And this is causing displacement in these areas, coming together with the gender-based violence that someone will speak about later. And finally, the economic vulnerability and limited livelihood options is also a major challenge in these areas because most of the people there are reliant on very narrow income generating sources that makes them very vulnerable to the climate shocks. So I advocate for trees as they offer multiple income streams. For example, you can get medicine, you can get timber, you can get nuts, honey, call it. So agroforestry actually offers a very sustainable way of dealing with the challenges that we are encountering in the drylands. And therefore, I call upon all of us to embrace agroforestry for community climate change adaptation, to contribute to our global goal on climate action, and also to mitigate the effects or to mitigate emissions of the greenhouse gases as it is our role to the nature. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Monica. It's quite eye-opening, and there is great opportunity with agroforestry to reverse the multitude of adverse effects. It's good to hear. Let's move over to a researcher in the group, in the expert group, Dr. Mlai. You're an agronomist. And what are the most effective strategies for building farmer capacity and strengthening extension services to support agroforestry adoption in the drylands?
Yeah, thank you. As you said that if you want any technology to be adopted, you have got to build farmers' capacity and strengthen extension services. So that one also applies to agroforest adoption into dryland farming. Ya kama ulivyosema kwenye swali lako ni kwamba ili teknolojia yote iweze kuchukuliwa na wakulima na kutumika, lazima mkulima awezeshwe na lazima eneo la ugani liweze kuimarishwa. So when we come to farmer capacity building, we must integrate the local knowledge available in the localities into our new technology so that to make it easy for our technology to be adopted. Imekuwa na tabia watu wanakuwa na teknolojia wanaipeleka kwa mkulima kama ilivyo na kujisahaulisha kwamba wakulima kuna mambo wanayoyajua yanayoendana na hiyo teknolojia, ambayo yale mambo ukishayaweka kwenye teknolojia yako inakuwa ni rahisi zaidi mkulima kuichukua ile teknolojia. Also, the technology must be location specific and addressing location problem, specific problem. For example, maybe in the dryland, as Monica said, there's a lot of problems like soil erosion, soil fertility, and also water conservation. So we must also investigate to know your area if it is having both or one of it, as some specific tree species address some specific problems. Ya ili teknolojia vivyo iweze kusaidia eneo husika, lazima hiyo teknolojia hiyo iangaliwe ione je inatatua tatizo lililo kwenye eneo husika, kwa maana sio kila teknolojia inaweza kutatua matatizo yote na kwenye kila eneo. Kuna baadhi ya teknolojia zinatatua tatizo kwa mfano la ukosefu wa maji kwenye udongo, kuhusu rutuba ya udongo na mmonyoko wa udongo. Au sangine kuna sehemu inaweza kuwa na matatizo yote, vile kunaweza kuwa na baadhi ya miti ambayo inaweza ikatatua matatizo yote kwa pamoja. Also, we must encourage farmer-led innovation by empowering farmers to do their own trials and then communicate the results with the wider community. As you know that most of the farmers, especially the lead farmers, some farmers, they do believe in them that whatever they tell them will be the final and is the correct one as compared to you who is not used to that community. Lazima tuwawezeshe wakulima wetu wao wanafanya majaribio kwenye maeneo yao kuhusu tatizo linalowakumba, lakini kwa kuwafundisha sisi, ili kwa sababu baadhi ya wakulima wanaaminika sana kwenye kijiji au maeneo fulani, na wakitoa matokeo wakiwaeleza wakulima wenzao wanayafuata zaidi kuliko wewe ambaye ni mgeni. Also, we must make sure that the marginalized and the women must have a secure land tenure, as the agroforest is a long-term investment. Lazima tuhakikishe kwamba wale wanawake na watu wale ambao waliotengwa kwenye jamii wanaweza wakapata maeneo na wakiwa na uhakika kuweza kuyamiliki kwa muda mrefu, kwa sababu agroforest ni eneo ambalo linahitaji uwekezaji wa muda mrefu kuweza kupata matokeo. When we come to strengthening agricultural extension, there we have like training for the agricultural extensions, specifically for the agroforest. They must have specific training for agroforest and climate smart agriculture. Tukija kwenye upande wa kuboresha huduma za ugani, wagani wetu lazima wapate mafunzo yanayohusiana na kilimo msitu. And also we must improve communication between sources and the last consumer, which are farmers, like the communication on the weather forecast and the climate impact. Lazima tuhakikishe tunaboresha mawasiliano kwa wakulima wetu, hasa kwenye mambo ya utabiri wa hali ya hewa na madhara ya mabadiliko ya tabia nchi. Also, we must improve the linkages between various stakeholders in the value chain. We must improve the linkage between researchers and the farmers and the NGOs and the other actors in the value chain. Lazima tuboreshe mahusiano kati ya wakulima na wanaotengeneza teknolojia, kama ni via agroforestry au ni watafiti, ili kuwe na mawasiliano na kuweza kujua teknolojia zetu zinafanyaje kazi kule kwa wakulima. Also, we must have a robust monitoring, evaluation and learning to know how our technologies are behaving or doing in the field, so that we can correct whenever possible to improve adoption. Lazima tuwe tuna ufuatiliaji ili tuweze kujifunza kujua, je, teknolojia tuzipeleka zinafanya kama tulivyokuwa tunatarajia au kuna mapungufu, na kama kuna mapungufu lazima tuje tuyarekebishe. Yeah, thank you.
Alright, nakushukuru sana Dr. Mlai. Asante kwa kutujumuisha wajamii wa Afrika Mashariki kwa tafsiri nzuri ya lugha Kiingereza na Kiswahili, na pia maelezo mazuri sana. Sasa dakika zako naona zimekwisha, inabidi sasa niende kwa mwakilishi wa vijana. I'd like to go over to the youth representative in the group. And Miriam, I hope you're quite ready, and thank you for joining this panel. And let's go straight into your question. Dr. Mlai, you're indicating that there was a final point that you want to quickly make?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, very quickly, and let's move on.
Also, must have diverse communication pathways of delivering our technology to the farmers, like in having the demo plots, farmer field schools, etc. Lazima tuwe na jinsi ya kuweza kufikisha teknolojia zetu kwa wakulima, kama kwa kuwa na mashamba darasa au mashamba ya maonyesho, ili kuwezesha wakulima wetu waweze kuelewa vizuri teknolojia. Asante.
Asante, nashukuru sana. Miriam, over to you, and we're looking at inclusion now. And how can we ensure that agroforestry initiatives are inclusive for women, for youth, and indigenous communities that you represent? And also, we've heard about land tenure, decision-making and benefit sharing. Over to you as a young person. Let's tackle this one.
Thank you so much. Okay, for me here today, I stand here as the youth representative, representing the youth on the project of VI Agroforestry, which stands for the trees, crops, and livestock on the same land. Okay, the youth are so much left behind in this country, in that they feel left out in different projects, and therefore today, as we all know, that the youth play a crucial role in promoting sustainable agriculture, enhancing biodiversity, and promoting livelihood. Therefore, in order to achieve the long-term success, we should also involve the community as well as the youth, because they're the one with the largest population in East Africa. And therefore, in order to include the youths in these projects, these are the things that the youths were proposing to be done for. And these are they required or requested for them to join in groups, so that they might get the funds in groups, or rather being recognized as groups, and also being helped in capacity building, therefore being provided training and mentorship on leadership programs. And as they deal with their project, they also requested that they might be helped in access of markets, in that they are being able to create job opportunities or access to loans in which it will help them carry on or expand their project. Therefore, I would like also to encourage my fellow youth that not only to depend on white-collar jobs, but also to be part of this program of climate change, which is dealing with the VI agroforestry. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Miriam, for representing the youth. We've heard you resoundingly. Now let's go over to the representative of the women in the group, women and youth. Elizabeth, how can traditional knowledge and scientific research be integrated to enhance agroforestry practices and ensure long-term sustainability? Picking up from Dr. Mlai.
Thank you so much, Taji. I think that's a very interesting question and a very pertinent one. So I believe the key to integrating sustainable agroforestry in drylands lies in bridging two worlds that are often viewed and kept apart. This is traditional knowledge and scientific research. Communities in East Africa, especially pastoralists, smallholder farmers, indigenous groups, carry with them generations of ecological wisdom. They understand which trees withstand drought, how soils respond to varying rainfall, grasses which are resilient in a varying climate and a changing climate, and which ones are beneficial to their livestock. They know how to balance trees, crops, pastures, and livestock in a fragile ecosystem. So this knowledge, the traditional knowledge, is often undervalued in research and policy spaces, and I don't think that's a good thing, and evidence shows that it's not really a good thing, because the result is that we often tend to design projects that are very technologically sound on paper, but are very socially disconnected. So what would happen if we will do the reverse? What would happen if we linked ecological knowledge and guided it with scientific experimentation? And we have seen evidence of this in some of the projects I have been involved in, such as the Drylands Transform project, where we allowed the communities to lead and to inform which grasses we were to grow in their landscape, which tree species to incorporate for their restoration plots. And the outcomes were not just ecologically resilient, they were also very socially embraced. This is possible now to scale outcomes and impact at a landscape level. So to answer really your question is, it begins with co-creation. Communities, women, youth shouldn't really be treated as beneficiaries of science, because they're really not. I view them as co-researchers, I view them as co-creators. We need, as Dr. Mlai was saying, and he was very pressed to put on that point across, we need to involve them in participatory trials. We need to include them in farmer field schools and community learning exchanges, such as the symposium that we will be having here in Tanzania from tomorrow all the way to Saturday. And this allows for local wisdom to be integrated into scientific insights, and we are able to evolve together as a society. This shared process then enhances what is, I call, ownership and trust and sustainability. And those, I believe, are tenets of our society to grow and to advance together. Another critical and equally important step is how we document and share. We all know that traditional African knowledge and wisdom is stored orally, in experiential learning, and it's passed down through generations. I was giving an example that's how I learned the pastures in the drylands, and there was an overlap and interlink between the Maasai elder that trained me on grasses and the botanist at my university, because they allowed me to feel the textures of the pastures, they allowed me to see the differences. And then now, how does research come in and bridge all these? Research can help in preserving it, recording community practices, validating where possible, because it's necessary to validate which ones are working, which ones work for which regions. And then now with that, then we bring it back to the society and to the communities in a language format or in a format that is accessible to them. This could be local radio stations. So beyond the major media outlets, we go to the local radio stations. We can also do that and integrate that into posters that are translated in local languages, because it's easy for them to see. We can have pictorials, and that's very possible to integrate the two. And then we can also have demonstration plots. And then the key one, and that's probably why I'm here, is how to include youth, women, indigenous groups, really much everyone that we sideline, yet they are very critical. An example is women, and I was just the other day and earlier today, I was saying that women are essentially the beast of burdens of society. They're laden with taking care of the home, and they're also the ones who are taking care and managing the home gardens. They're the ones who are tasking with managing the tree nurseries. And with them, with all this, because it's practice, it's experience, they are carrying a lot of knowledge that we do not recognize and acknowledge. And it's really necessary that we bring it back together and include it into our practices, our learning, and we broadcast it for the rest of the society to see. So when we ensure that the experiences are shaping research, we're able to design projects and design interventions that actually strengthen both the society as scientific relevant, and they help in fulfilling the SDGs such as gender equity and practice. Among the ways we can include women is through table banking, and these are practices that we have been doing for a long time and they have been working. So in conclusion, integration is not about science replacing tradition, it's about science listening to tradition, strengthening it, and building on it. And then that way we will have a culture of resilience. Thank you so much.
Very compelling argument. There's no way we can argue with you. You're also very ambitious about it as well. Let's move over to Kaka Omari Mwaim. You are an entrepreneur, a farmer. You're young, but you're saying you're rather representing the farmers and not the young people. Okay, that's all right. You're from AMSHA, the rural entrepreneurship. And in what ways can the private sector, particularly agribusiness actors, be incentivized to invest in agroforestry systems in dryland regions? And how can such investments be structured to ensure both commercial sustainability and also long-term ecological sustainability?
Thank you very much.
Karibu Kaka Omari.
Thank you very much, Kaka Taji. Yeah, I'm representing farmers, as you mentioned. Farmers are the biggest, in my opinion. It's very important, biggest private sector across the region. So it's very important to be represented. And how are we going to incentivize them so they can invest in agroforest? I have the following suggestions. Number one, through fiscal incentives such as tax order. We know investing in the agroforest is a long-term investment. It takes a long time to see a benefits out of it. So it's very important to introduce a tax order to those investors, the farmers and the other business sectors, so they can feel it's the way to encourage them to invest in that sector. Number two, farmers should be facilitated to access carbon credit. This is very important because right now, the process and the procedures of accessing carbon credits are cumbersome, right? Not very easy to follow them and to access them. So those who are responsible to make sure whoever qualified to access carbon credits get them, farmers and the other agribusiness sector should be included as well and be facilitated to access them. Number three, is through price support. We need to guarantee the offtake of agroforest products such as fruits, timber, fodder, and so forth. We should introduce like sort of premium price, a better price for those who are investing in agroforest, so they can feel like we must do this because you get a better price of your produce than doing the other way around. That's my suggestion number three. And talking about commercial viable business models, which is a part two of the question, I would suggest the following. Number one is we should promote outgrowers or contract farming, where buyers or processors work in contractual arrangement with farmers, smallholder farmers particularly. So the processor or buyer provides seedlings, provides other inputs and technical support, and might provide financial support to the farmers. And later on, farmers will supply those products to the processor. But this is one of the models that we should promote. And secondly, we should also keep on educating the farmers and those agribusiness actors when they are doing the farm clearing, bush cleaning, farm preparation. It's very important for them to leave behind a certain number of trees, a certain percentage, like 10, 15 trees should be left behind, because that's how we promote agroforest. Or they should now start planting trees along the farm border. That's the way of integrating best agricultural agroforest practices to them. Kwa kifupi, wakulima wawezeshwe ili waweze kujikita zaidi kwenye kilimo misitu, ni lazima wapatiwe msamaha wa kikodi au nafuu wa kikodi, namba moja. Namba mbili, wawezeshwe kuuza hewa ya ukaa. Namba tatu, mazao yanayotokana na kilimo mseto yapatiwe bei nzuri zaidi ambayo itatoa hamasa kwa wakulima kuweza kuwekeza hapo. Asante.
Alright, nakushukuru sana kwa mchango wako mzuri. And now let's continue, let's proceed. Now, Mary, I'm going to come over to you, and we're now going to discuss some of the policy challenges, and so here are some of the questions that I've prepared for you. I'll give you a little bit of time. Everybody else has got 2 or 3, 5 minutes, but I'll give you a little bit of time, because this is now where we're looking at the policy issues and looking at how we're going to face the challenges face on. All right, so my question to you is, what opportunities exist for enhancing regional collaboration among East African countries? This is in order to harmonize agroforestry policies and share best practices for drylands restoration. And how feasible is the establishment of an East African agroforestry platform?
Thank you very much. Indeed, there is need to have the intergovernmental and stakeholder collaboration among countries in order to achieve the benefits of agroforestry. To start with, we have all acknowledged that Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania have a shared ecological and socio-economic context. These are the 60 to 70% of it being semi-arid and arid zones that faces similar challenges from land degradation, deforestation, as well as the climate vulnerability. So these are common challenges that calls for a harmonized approach to address these particular challenges. And therefore, the East African community already provides a political and institutional framework for environmental and agricultural cooperation. And therefore, there is need to establish East Africa Agroforestry Coordination Platform. And this should be a key priority for the Eastern African countries to coordinate the implementation and also the upscaling of agroforestry within the region. We therefore call for establishment of East Africa Agroforestry Coordination Platform. The East African community, or let me talk of Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda, are at different level when it comes to establishment of policies, AUSERA. Kenya and Tanzania have already launched the agroforestry strategy, and now they are at the implementation stage. Uganda is at the end process of finalizing the process. And therefore, there are key knowledge, lessons, challenges that the two countries, Tanzania and Kenya, have already faced that Uganda can learn from. So this platform can provide a platform, let me say a platform where there can be exchange of knowledge and practices, not only for policymakers, researchers, and farmers, but also provide a platform where there will be training, cross-learnings, peer-to-peer exchange that will strengthen the implementation of policies and upscaling of agroforestry within the region. These this region has an added opportunity of the fact that we have agroforestry hubs that are situated within the region. These are the research and innovation hubs. For example, we have ICRAF, the World Agroforestry Hub, which provides a great opportunity for agroforestry, not just for scaling up, but scaling out and deep. And therefore, a coordination platform will provide researchers a platform to reduce duplication, a platform to provide evidence for policy, not just policy formulation, but also policy implementation, as well as evidence that can be scaled out within the region that we are facing similar challenges. I would also want to bring out the opportunity of investment opportunities and funding opportunity where there is a coordination or a collaboration within the intergovernment and also the stakeholders within the region. There are opportunities to tap on the funds that exist for large-scale restoration of the dry lands using the agroforestry approach. And therefore, it is time that we come together as a region and tap on these financing and investment opportunities. I'd like to say that tackling the regional ecological and socio-economic challenges calls for a collaborative and inclusive policy implementation. No one should be left behind when it comes to policy implementation. We also have the advantage of that we have strong institutions. There is a high political will to tackle climate change issues. There is political will to restore our land through agroforestry approaches. And there is enough technical expertise to support the process. And we say that the time is now to move from policy to action. Thank you.
All right. Elizabeth, I think you'd like to pick up on that one, having listened to you. Karibu sana, you've heard from your colleague, your expert colleague, and so how can the governments of Tanzania and Kenya, for example, put in place their national agroforestry strategies? I believe those are the ones that were a little bit advanced. How can the collaboration between researchers, policymakers, and community actors be strengthened to co-create knowledge and implement the existing agroforestry strategies in drylands?
Thank you. I think Mary has tackled the bulk of it, but let me insist on a few points. First, it will be to commend the governments of Kenya and Tanzania. We are used to blaming our governments so much, but when they do a good thing, we can at least commend them. So having the national agroforestry strategies for Kenya and Uganda is a commendable step. It shows political goodwill and recognition that agroforestry agroforestry's role in climate resilience and food security is recognized in the two countries, in Kenya and Tanzania. But then now, as Mary has said, it's now time to move from policy creation, because we already have the documents, and move to implementation. Researchers provide valuable data. There's no arguing with that. It's a fact. And then now policymakers define the direction, and they have defined the direction while the community is bringing lived experience. But then now the issue is that we often work in silos. We work individually. So the researchers are in their own hole working on their own thing. Policymakers the same and communities the same. But now we need to come together. My friends should probably, they've nicknamed me Miss SDG 17 because I'm very championing on partnerships for the goal, and I think it's a very important SDG. So working from working in silos to working together, now we are able to now not miss opportunities to learn from one another. And this is what I call knowledge bridges. And these are structured spaces that connect actors in a continuous and practical dialogue. The other thing is research institutions can now tailor their findings in policy briefs, in policy language, not just academic language, because we often tend to focus mostly on the publications, but then now moving into policy briefs. And then now with the policymakers, they turn that into multi-stakeholder platforms, as Mary has said, where we have a coordination or a knowledge hub, that brings together local elders, researchers, and extension officers, where they meet regularly to align the priorities, because those documents are actually quite action-packed. They have a lot of knowledge. So now we need to align the priorities. Where do we start? Where are we? And how do we move on from there? And then also monitor progress so that we can learn as we move. From experience, we've seen how VI Agroforestry has been doing a good job across the 3 countries. In Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda, they've been able to form collaborative outcomes and projects that have been very beneficial with interventions in dealing with climate change and now with dryland climate change. So integrating trees such as fodder trees into pastoral systems, these have created a sense of ownership and accelerated adoption, because they don't just work an organization, they work together with the farmers, they work together with the civil societies, they are very inclusive. And then now the next thing is organizations such as EcoHope Africa, where they're showing that communication and storytelling is a very much part of science, it's a very much part of bridging the final gap in what we're doing. So we make such concepts, which sometimes are very technical dense, to be understandable to the everyday citizen, to the farmers, to the communities. Then they are able to be relatable and actionable, especially among the youth and women. I love those groups. Now, policy research, when policies reach people through human stories, we see that they stop being abstract, they stop being these daunting tasks to being lived possibilities. And then another critical thing for collaboration is institutional memory. So every pilot project, as Mary has said, and every local success should fit into a national and regional database. We avoid duplication, but more importantly, we strengthen long-term learning. Over time, we could evolve this, as we've said, into an East African agroforestry coordination platform that will be a knowledge hub. We're linking research, practice, and policy across borders. And we aligning them with very critical frameworks such as the AFR 100, the AU's Agenda 2063, and the International Year of Rangelands and Pastoralists 2026. These are critical and global frameworks that agroforestry feeds into. So ultimately, collaboration isn't about who leads. It's about how we learn and how we act together. So when each actor contributes their unique strength, our national strategies will move from paper to practice. And it's now with this call that we want to call on to Uganda, our friends in Uganda, please, please, please now create a national strategy on agroforestry. It's very critical, it's been proven. There's no way Kenya and Tanzania, we've seen it's working, and now we have a strategy so that we move together, because we believe in leaving no one behind. Thank you.
And that's why we come together for this importance.
Exactly.
I think we should have some headway in the next 2 days.
True.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank you, Mary, and also Elizabeth, for discussing this particular very important point. But this one may be one of the crucial points as we move to our final expert, Bernadette Tukwasa. You are a Forest, Carbon and Compliance Officer at Trio Uganda. The key word here is financing. We've heard about investments and so forth. So financing. What innovative financing mechanisms or incentives, for example, climate funds, subsidies, value chain development, what are needed to support agroforestry in drylands? We're listening to you very carefully, Bernadette.
Yes, thank you very much. I won't repeat what has been asked to me. I'll go straight to the point. The first thing that I'm looking at to speaking to policy is the blended financing. This is a mix of tax holidays, subsidies, because you look at drylands, they're facing a lot of challenges, and most of which are natural and humanity has no control over. So blended financing will increase and entice investors to come into the country because of the packages that are added to dryland forestry and agroforestry activities. I want to speak to payment in ecosystem services. This is something that is new and very critical and interesting when someone hears about it. But we are attaching a monetary advantage to farmers and practitioners that are promoting soil health improvement, carbon sequestration, water retention through the activities that they're doing, could be downstream or upstream. So the payment in ecosystem services is actually bringing importance of what most politicians do not recognize. They be like, okay, the forests are there, where is the money? So the money is coming in as payment for ecosystem services, which is also dressed as carbon trading, whereby maybe an arrangement is made between a farmer and a project owner to plant trees for a certain period of time, and they obtain credits from the carbon that is sequestered and stored by their trees. Another incentive that I would speak to is agroforestry insurance, something that is new, very attractive, but quite complex to understand. A number of economists try to avoid nature-based solution insurance because of the number of risks that are attached to it. But if a percentage is attached to these risks, say drought, speak to flooding, if a percentage of insurance attached to these activities, then dryland farming and agroforestry will not be such a big deal. A farmer will plant the trees when they know that they have a policy that will cover them in case of disaster. This will also speak to maybe, I will also speak to microfinancing, particularly innovative incentives like micro-leasing. Farmers in the dryland forestry, they would not have vast amounts of land because I'm understanding the tenure in Africa is community land incentives, but they have machinery. We should be able to appreciate the irrigation systems that they're having and award them a loan, and the correct being their capital good. Say a tractor could be irrigation system. This will earn them some money in their pockets. Let's look at sustainability-linked loans. We educate our farmers. A number of capacity building has been mentioned. Teach farmers how they can get these sustainability loans. Talk about the small green bonds that can come through the different banks within these farmer communities. If a given project is bringing in social outcomes, environmental benefits, why not loan these small projects, and the farmers in dryland areas are also benefiting from that. Another key issue is value addition during production. A number of times in Africa, people are even buying food produce on the farm, which is not good. So we should be able to educate our farmers. When someone is buying your produce from the farm, you're not going to benefit. They should be able to have arrangements to dry these crops and maybe process them into a halfway, which will fetch a higher price for the farmer and for the country at large. I think with that, I'm very happy to share the financial insights and hope that they're very actionable and applicable across East Africa. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you very much, Bernadette. And that's rounding off all the experts, and I'm now going to move over to David Maeri. And David, allow me to introduce you properly as you have the closing remarks. You're the Regional Communications Advisor, VI Agroforestry. You're the Communications Lead, and you're doing the closing remarks. But I do have some questions for you with a slight recap on what our audience has been enjoying, listening, and watching. Ladies and gentlemen, we started off the East African Dryland Agroforestry Post-Policy Brief Dialogue, and we were discussing agroforestry as a solution to challenges in East Africa, East African drylands. And our panel experts were from Tanzania, Uganda, and Kenya. I hope you've enjoyed listening to them. And the objectives have been quite a few. We've been discussing climate and food security challenges in dryland communities, policy gaps, community-centered solutions, private sector investments, and innovative financing mechanisms, as you've heard from the final expert, Bernadette. Now over to you, David Maeri. I have maybe one or two questions for you, and those will be centered around how has media coverage influenced agroforestry uptake, and what communication strategies have proven the most effective? Karibu sana.
Asante sana Taji. Thank you for that question. I'd like to say that communication, or in Swahili, mawasiliano, is the glue that brings these kind of projects together. Because communication not only helps to develop and to achieve SDG, that's a Sustainable Development Goal 17, which is partnerships for the goals, but it helps to amplify, it helps to bridge advocacy, and it helps with accountability. Those are my 3 A's that I talk about when I'm talking about communication. When we say advocacy, we're talking about communication. Good storytelling moves policy faster than data can. yaani kwa Kiswahili inasukuma ushawishi na wa sera, which means that if there is good information and data from some of our research scientists here, we're able to translate that in a way that the people can understand. And so it moves from paper and policy to people and practice. And that is the power of communication. Secondly, I talked about amplification. When people see themselves in the stories, they take ownership and they become part of the solution. Yani watu wanachukua suluhisho na wanaitimiza hao wenyewe wakijiona katika zile hadithi in storytelling. And lastly, we talk about accountability. A lot of funds have been put here. Kuna fedha nyingi ya kutimiza mradi kama huu. Na bila communication, bila mawasiliano, mtutajuaje kama hili limetimizwa? And so we need to have storytelling and communication in order to understand how the funds have been utilized, the challenges, and the lessons learned from communication. Some of the things that have worked for us is using digital, kutumia mtandao, to reach the youth. As you know, the youth are very tech savvy. And so these are some of the strategies that have worked for us. Our success story is in Kenya, where we were doing some advocacy work using conferences, using content digitally and print media. And we were able to utilize that information and the storytelling to shift policy in respect to pesticides. And we were able to see in Kenya some of the policies overturned and new ones put in place to advocate for organic pesticides. And so storytelling, communication is very key. It translates science into action. Inasaidia wakulima kuelewa mbinu mpya na viongozi wa sera kuona ushahidi wa kuwekeza. It's helping policymakers see the evidence for the investments that need to be made. And so communication is a key and crucial and strategic part of such projects, of development, of agroforestry. Kwa ufupi, mawasiliano kamilifu huleta maendeleo endelevu kwa wakulima wadogo na kwa jamii. Asante.
David, as we move forward into day 1 and 2 of the symposium, any words to the communities of East Africa and within the drylands?
Asante sana. I would like to take this opportunity to invite wadau wote kutoka Tanzania, kutoka Kenya, pia Uganda na Afrika nzima. If you can make it to Musoma for the next 3 days, we will be in Musoma for the annual symposium kwa maonyesho ya kilimo mseto, and there will be all these great panelists here to answer your questions and to offer more insight on agroforestry. They'll be showcasing of farming practices very practically. There are farms in the symposium. Kwa hivyo tunawakaribisha nyote, karibuni sana Musoma.
All right, thank you very much, David. And this concludes our dialogue. And thank you very much for joining us. I was seated with members of the expert group by SIANI, the Swedish International Agricultural Network, and VI Agroforestry, who are co-sponsors. Some of the issues that you've heard emanating from the discussions and from our dialogue today have been on climate change impacts and agroforestry benefits, building farmer capacity and extension services, inclusive agroforestry initiatives, integrating traditional knowledge and scientific research, private sector investments and policy alignment, regional collaboration and knowledge sharing, as well as financing and market opportunities, and communication and visibility, which is a power to be reckoned with. Thank you for joining us. We were live on Mwananchi digital platforms in Tanzania, the Daily Monitor digital in Uganda, and NTV Kenya digital platforms in Kenya. And once again, allow me to thank my esteemed and expert panelists, Ms. Nabalira Sarah Kezia from Uganda. Thank you very much. And Dr. Monica Nderitu, the Environment and the Climate Change Resilience Advisor at VI Agroforestry. Thank you very much. And the project lead as well. Miriam Chemtai, a young representative from Paran Women Kenya. Karibu sana. Dr. Deusdedit Pitamlai, the agronomist from Tanzania with TARI. Thank you very much for your insights on research and academia. Elizabeth Githendu, rangeland ecologist from the University of Nairobi, representing women and youth, and thank you very much for your vigor and passion in this area. Kakomari Mwaim, a farmer and agribusiness expert from Amsha Institute of Rural Entrepreneurship. Thank you very much for representing the farmers in this dialogue. And Ms. Mary Irungu, Policy and Advocacy Manager at Participatory Ecological Land Use Management, Pelham, Kenya. Thank you very much for representing the civil society. Very well done. Ms. Bernadette Natukwasa, Forest Carbon and Compliance Officer at TRIO, Uganda. I think you need to unpackage some of the language you're speaking. It's brand new, but it's also very exciting. Thank you for imparting that. And of course, Dr. David Maeri, the Regional Communications Advisor, thank you for the welcome, and we wish you well for the 2-day symposium. From us here, we'd like to say asanteni. Let's wave to everybody. Na kwa Kiswahili tunasema karibuni sana, kwaherini, na muwe na siku, usiku, asubuhi njema popote mlipo. Asanteni sana, tunawashukuru sana.